Welcome to Song Sessions. I'm your host, David Pomeranz, and today's guest is one of the most talented lyricists of our time. He walks in the shoes of the great American theater writers Ira Gershwin, Larry Hart, Stephen Sondheim, and Frank Loesser. And he's unparalleled with his ability to generate wordplay and pictures that can make you think and laugh and feel. He's won a Tony Award for Best Musical and Best Score for City of Angels, as well as the Drama Desk Award for Outstanding Lyrics. He's earned 3 more Tony nominations, one for The Goodbye Girl and the other for The Woman in White. Not to mention 2 Oscar and 2 Grammy nominations as well. And listen, when it comes to sheer creativity, high craft, and excellence, there's just nobody better than this guy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so happy to introduce to you my friend, David ZIPPEL.
Thank you for that lovely introduction.
You're so welcome. It's well deserved. So you were saying earlier that you're in Palm Springs right now,
I am.
lavishing it up. You have a beautiful home there, and don't live in New York at the moment. But somehow I can't possibly see you not being in New York. So
That's a temporary situation.
Yeah. Well, I guess when there's a production and a need, and you'll be there.
Indeed.
But in the meantime, I guess you don't miss the weather?
Well, it's been pretty nice being in the desert, I have to say. I was last summer when it was 115. I said I was sweltering in place.
You're sweltering in place?
Yeah, remember we were all sheltering in place. So.
Oh, God. And we've known each other now for, gosh, 25 years?
At least.
We have, at least. And we met through our mutual friend, Kathy Lee Gifford.
Indeed.
I'll just explain to the folks how we met, if you don't mind. Kathy Lee Gifford, who's a very famous American TV host and a terrific writer, actually, and singer, did an album of one of the songs that David and I co-wrote called Born for You. And many of you know that song. And it was a lovely album. And somehow there was either a party or something, but we all got to meet one another. And that was lovely.
Actually, we met a little before that. We met through Frank, the sweet man from Warner Chapel, put us together. We had a writing session. And we read Born for You for as an audition for Franco Zeffirelli's, Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, I think.
That's exactly right.
But they had a totally different, we were sort of misled because they were looking for a rockier, more non-traditional approach to the show. And as a result, we had a beautiful song that was not right for their film, but one of the best songs I feel like I've ever been a part of. For sure. Good.
Yes, thank you. Well, you've done that's a beautiful lyric and a gorgeous song. Yes, of course, what you just said is true, because how would we have gotten anything to Kathy Lee if we hadn't written it, right? And I think also, I remember writing with you at your apartment, but also we did some writing at ASCAP. There was a writer's room there, and our friend Michael Kirker, who was and I called Michael, this is something you may not know, I called Michael being a fan of yours, and I said, I'd like to meet this guy, ZIPPEL. And he said, I happen to know him. And so through him and through Frank Military, I think we did.
Well, I thank them both for the introduction.
Me too, for sure. Now, you were raised in Easton, Pennsylvania, which I hear is the Crayola capital of the world, Crayola crayons.
It is. And it used to be Dixie cups, but they don't make them anymore.
Oh, that's not right. Dixie cups and crayons.
Right.
That'd be like, you'd think that the whole town would be run by children.
Right. And Lafayette College, which I don't know if you're aware of it, but it's a very good.
Yes, I am. Oh, fantastic. You were raised 70 miles or so from New York City. And did your parents take you to the theater much when you were a kid?
They did. The first show I ever saw was in the Round in a little summer music circus called St. John Terrell's Music Circus, St. John, but they called it St. John, like the Brits do. And they took me to the Music Man, and it just
Ah,
blew me away. I loved it so much. I wanted to be a part of the theater somehow. And that was sort
oh
of the beginning. And they took me to Broadway shows. I saw Oliver when I was a kid with all those children in it. And it just felt like this is something I wanted to be a part of.
my gosh. When you listened to the lyrics to those things, was that especially something that took your attention? Because those are genius lyrics, both of those shows.
Absolutely. The music, the lyrics. And I remember in the round, when I saw the Music Man, there's very limited sets. But the first time the streetlights flew in and suddenly they were no longer in this room, they were outside, and I got goosebumps, and that was the first theater magic moment I can recall.
Oh my Lord, my God! Yes, it's incredible, and it's something interesting for those who haven't seen a show, a musical on Broadway. There's something a little different about it. There's a crispness, there's a professionalism, there's a somethingness where you get it no other place. And I'm sure you've seen, beautiful touring companies, beautiful things in the West End, lovely things. But Broadway's a different animal.
When a show doesn't have to tour and it doesn't have to be able to be broken down and put in a truck and move from city to city, there's more scenic opportunities, and so they usually up the game a little bit. And of course, being in New York, all actors generally want to stay home, so you get the absolute best of the best when you're on Broadway.
Oh, that's interesting. That makes sense. Well, good. And then who were your heroes, your writing heroes growing up?
Well, you named some of them, so I was honored to be compared to them. Alan J. Lerner, I thought My Fair Lady just blew me away. Gypsy and the score with Julie Stein and Stephen Sondheim's lyrics and West Side Story, those were his first two shows, are just spectacular. And Sheldon Harnick, who turned 97 last week, is a hero of mine and one of my all-time favorite lyricists. He wrote Fiddler on the Roof and The Rothschild. She Loves Me.
Sure.
But I also love the earlier lyricists, Irving Berlin, and this elegance and simplicity of his work, and Lorenz Hart, and of course Oscar Hammerstein as well.
Sure.
Dorothy Fields.
And Dorothy Fields. Yes.
Carolyn Lee, don't forget her. The women are great.
Yeah, Carolyn Lee was incredible. Just a little bit unsung.
It's true. The Cole Porter of the group, in a sense, although I left Cole Porter out, who was dazzling. Those lyrics are just astonishingly great to this day.
They are delightful, delicious, and lovely, those lyrics he wrote. Did you see what I did there?
Yeah.
Oh my God. And here's the interesting thing to me. I always knew this about you, that you had studied law. And I know you've spoken about this, in public and such. But the question I have is, when you studied law at Harvard.
I did.
And what was the idea? Was it a function of a parent or someone saying, get a real job? Or did you consider that you wouldn't make it in theater? Or what made you go down that path?
Well, I'm a fairly pragmatic person. And the idea of being a lyricist for a living seemed so unlikely to me that I figured by going to law school and then pursuing theater, I would always be able to say, well, this is what I want to do. I don't have to do this. If it doesn't work out, get a job I could be a producer, or I could work for a film company, or I could be a lawyer and represent lyricists. Although I think I would rather, at the time, thought I'd rather have a theater lawyer than be a theater lawyer.
Oh, I see.
But I had an experience. The first show I ever wrote, I was in college, and a friend of mine was a director. He was the head of the theater department at Temple University, a man named Joe Leonardo, a really fine director. And he was doing a pre-Broadway show in Washington, D.C. And the lyricists and the creative team had a falling out, and he quit. And they needed to finish the show. And Joe called me, and he knew that I was an aspiring lyricist, although I was I guess a junior in college. And he said, if you can audition, and maybe you'll get a chance to write a song or two for the show. So I wrote a song. I didn't have a composer. I wrote the music and the lyrics. The
Wow.
show was called Rotunda, and it was about, it was kind of a Capitol Hill soap opera, and written by two staffers on the Hill. And it wasn't very good, I have to say. But I wrote a song called Don't Mess with the Press, and they liked it. And they said, great, write another one. So there was a kid down the hall who played the piano really well. And I don't think he had necessarily aspired to be a composer, but I said, will you write the next song with me? And he did. And they loved it. And so they said, we'll do that one. And then they said, write another one. And I said, you can't even have the first two unless you hire me to finish the show. And they said,
there you go. You see, you had a good lawyer.
Exactly. This is before I went to law school. So
okay.
They said, okay. So I went and I finished. I ended up writing 5 songs all in all. One with the music myself, the other 3 with 4 with Ed, my neighbor in the hall. It's college, and the show opened and got was not good reviews. The Washington Post was the main theater paper in town, and as it still is, and they had a very kindly pan, but they pointed out 3 or 4 songs, all of which were mine. So that made me feel good. And then the other review was David Richards in the Washington Star, who said, and I'll never forget this because it is burned into the back of my brain, in Rotunda, that was the name of the show, there is not a melody you can like, a melody you can hum, a character you can like, or a lyric that doesn't automatically upgrade your opinion of the Burma Shave Bards.
Oh, boy.
So I promptly filled out my law school application and then went to law school while continuing to write. And
yeah, just in case. But that's great. But, hey, those critics are. Did you see Birdman? Birdman?
Yes.
Yeah, the critic character in that thing. Isn't that fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
Because we've never met anyone like that, I'm sure.
Never.
Okay, no. All right, so there you go. So now you're a lawyer, and but you've had this experience, and when did you move to New York? When did you actually do that?
I finished law school on the 25th of May and moved to New York that day. That was many, many years ago. And I never practiced law. I took the bar because I figured I got through it. I should get the license, but I hope never to practice. And so far, knock wood, I have not practiced law.
Okay.
Other than to give some unwelcome advice now and then.
Well, how about yourself, though? I mean, you know what to look for, right?
I'm a good client.
What to look out for?
Yeah, exactly. I'm a very good client.
It's always good to be able, as much as you can, and in many areas as one can. And so there you are in New York, doing what? I just picture you going, now what do I do? No, but you had a plan. You must have had friends who were in the theater.
While I was in law school, I met a singer named Pamela Stanley, who was terrific singer and writer, and she and I had been songwriting together, and she got a record deal to do disco. So I wrote songs with her that were for her and 2 other artists that were published and recorded. And I also had the good fortune to meet Barbara Cook, the singer Barbara Cook, and Wally Harper. And Wally became my first theater collaborator. So it wasn't long after I graduated that Barbara did a Carnegie Hall concert. And at that concert, it became a record. And that was my first success to Steam, because it got great notices and people loved it. And it was a live recording. So there was a comedy song in it called the Ingenue Song. And 2,500 people in Carnegie Hall, or 2,700 people, lost it and laughed through the whole thing, which was very reassuring. Although I certainly couldn't pay my rent based on what I made from that recording.
No, but my goodness gracious, to have it be Carnegie Hall, Barbara Cook, and to get that kind of response must have been just a delicious moment for you.
It was wonderful. And anytime I was worried or needed reassuring that I could actually do this, I would play that and listen to the applause and think, I can do this. This is good.
That's wonderful. You have a very distinctive, I won't even call it a style, but you have when I listen to your songs, there's a bar that I'm aware of, There's a quality bar, and you don't ever dip below that quality bar. And I've listened to a lot of your material over the years, and even in this past week, you know, when I study up for some of the guests we have here, and boy oh boy, you know, when I listen to some of the things you wrote for every project, honestly, but I want to start with City of Angels. I'm in admiration of your lyrics for different reasons for many of the projects that you've done over the last years. So City of Angels was a huge Broadway hit and won a Tony and Best Score, Best Musical, and all that. How did you hook up with Cy Coleman, and how did he hook up with you? You both had the good fortune to meet each other.
Well, I was very lucky. One of my classmates at Harvard was the son of a rather prominent theater attorney named Al Da Silva. And Russell, his son, became a fan of mine as a writer, and said, I think my dad should meet you. So his dad and his mom became advocates for me, and Al represented Larry Gelbart and Cy Coleman.
Oh my!
But it was not like an instant introduction. And Cy liked things to be his idea, and Al and Xenia, my friends, my lawyer, my advocates, were sort of working on Cy to consider working with me. And then I had done this little off-Broadway review, and it got great reviews. I was very lucky. I started my career with a career retrospective, and did this little review. And because it was all the songs I had written, the only thing I had written before. So I put them in this little review, and the Times loved it, and actually other papers did as well. So I was very lucky. It was a great calling card, and other people saw it and were calling Cy. His producing partner on Barnum saw Carnegie Hall with Barbara Cook and started talking to Cy. And I think he felt he was the subject of a campaign. So he was not immediately interested. But about a year or two later, he called me with a project to meet with him. And it was not a project that I thought was very interesting. It was about drag performers. And I thought La Cage aux Folles had already happened. And it seemed like it was going over a retread of territory that it just didn't seem promising to me. But I certainly wasn't going to miss an opportunity to write with Cy Coleman. Yeah. And but I had read about a musical film noir with a jazz score that he and Larry Gelbart were working on. The title at the time was called Death is for Suckers. And I loved the title, and I loved the idea of doing a jazz score. And so I pitched myself for that. And he said, well, we're talking to a lot of heavyweights, a lot of big shots for that show. And I said, well, if you don't have any luck, or if you'd give me a chance, that would be great. And basically about 3 months later, he called me up and said, I talked to Larry. Here's the deal. If you were willing to, we'll write 3 songs together and work with Larry and choose the songs from the show. And if we're happy at the end of those 3 songs, we'll stop and look and consider, and maybe, if things work out, we'll go forward, which is a very nice way of saying whether or not I was fired. And so that's what we did. And after the second song, they were so enthusiastic that we never stopped. We just went ahead.
Wow. Were some of those early songs, You're Nothing Without Me and all that sort of thing?
Came a little later. The first song was a song called Lost and Found. And the second song, actually, I've told this story before, but it had a huge effect on my life. I went to see Cy, and he played this melody first that was just ravishing. And I thought, wow, if I can write a lyric that pleases him, not only will I get to write this show, but I will have written a Cy Coleman standard. I was so sure that it was a great song, great melody. And so I was a little intimidated by the opportunity, more than Cy and Larry. They were incredibly gracious and lovely. And so Cy was going off on a vacation. So he left me with the lyric and an assignment. And but while I was in the room, I pitched the title because I heard where it would sit on the music. And I said, with every breath I take. And he said, I love that. So I had a lot of confidence that I was on the right track. And I went home and I wrote the lyric, and I thought it was good. But then, because of the enormity of what this meant to the opportunity, I thought, I better keep writing. So I wrote 12 different versions.
Oh, oh my gosh.
I showed up at his office about a week and a half later, and he was tanned and rested from his Caribbean vacation. And I put the lyrics on top of his piano with the one I'd written first, which is still the one I like the best, on top. And he sat down and he played it, and he straight through and sang it. And he said, "This is terrific. Let's call Larry and play it for him." So while he was dialing Larry Gelbart, I removed the other 11 or 12 versions, and we never stopped. That was the beginning of our beautiful relationship and friendship.
Oh, that's an extraordinary story. Thank you for that. That's extraordinary. You know, it's interesting. This shouldn't just go by. I want to talk more about the show, but a lot of the young writers, we were watching the show of all genres, and this idea about this business being a social enterprise, social sport. And it's like, well, how do we get started in this business? And how do I, and I always say kind of what you're getting at, which is do it a lot with a lot of people, show them, meet them. Play at school. If you're a performer, you play at school. If you're in your bar mitzvahs and weddings, and if you're a writer, you write the school show and you try. So I just wanted to amplify what you said for everyone, that how important that is to not just write in hopes of being discovered, or write in hopes of maybe someday you'll go to New York and blah, blah, blah. You are where you are, and you produce where you are, and you produce well, and you do the best you can, and you demonstrate your ability everywhere, and keep going.
That's the advice I give everyone. Write with whomever you can. And if you find performers who sing well that you admire, beg them to sing your songs, in a sense, because that's a way you can grow, watching audiences or listening with audiences as your work is performed if you're not a performer. And in New York, certainly, getting cabaret performers used to be a way to get reviewed, because critics reviewed them. Now it's harder than ever, although I guess with blog reviews, and there's still opportunities to have people notice what you've done. Good way to also, if you're writing for theater, to write a comedy song or something that will get an audience reaction, way to have people respond to what you do. So I think your advice is pitch perfect.
Good, thank you. Yeah, it's true. You know, I've had a question, and then I'm going to actually be audacious enough to read one of your lyrics from City of Angels, because it always makes me smile. But here's my question. When you're writing with a book writer like Larry Gelbart, or later on with Neil Simon for Goodbye Girl, and then with Wendy Wasserstein, and I've forgotten now who you wrote Woman in White with. The
book was Charlotte Jones, a British playwright.
Okay. When you write with these people, I've written musicals, and I always wonder when I'm writing, how much should I expect of the book writer? How much must I insist that he give me? Who is this character, and what do they feel, and where am I, and where are we going? And yet, I'll just ask I'm going a little more than ask the question. I look at Sondheim. I look at Sunday in the Park with George, let's say, and which is lovely, almost an operetta, really. And it looks as if there is no book. I mean, James Lapine is one of the finer book writers in the world. And I wonder how much the songwriter, and the lyricist in particular, must rely on the book writer, and to what degree they must lead the book writer and show them how this can be opened up. Can you comment on that?
Sure. It's very much a back and forth process. When I've been writing with Andrew Lloyd Webber, and he likes through composed shows where there's not as much dialogue, more of it's sung than spoken. Sure. And so with The Woman in White, I would have her write complete scenes, and then I would completely rewrite the scenes as songs using the themes that Andrew wrote. Sometimes Andrew would write a long sequence musically first, and I would take that music and take the scene and put the information from that scene and the tone of the characters into the lyric. Right now I'm doing a show with Andrew and a promising young woman named Emerald Fennell. She won an Oscar 2 weeks ago for Promising Young Woman. And she wrote the second season of Killing Eve, and she's really smart. And we're doing a new version of Cinderella. And this show has some dialogue. It's sort of a split between a through sung and a traditional book musical where the dialogue stops when the song moment begins. And we collaborated very closely together. It's really, these are the characters, the initial take of the story is completely Emerald. But as we work together, I think I've influenced how the characters speak and sing. We just go back and forth. And the important thing is that everyone is writing the same show, that you understand what you're doing, and that you have the same take. Otherwise, it feels like a mishmash. And I always say the lyricist's job is to make it sound like one person wrote the book, music, and lyrics. Right.
Well, that's the gorgeousness of the art of that. It's fascinating because I do wonder sometimes if I'm expecting too much from the book writer. I'll be sitting there, if I'm writing a lyric for a show, I'm sitting there going, there's just not enough here. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah,
and I think that is the book writer's job. That
absolutely.
And then when it's clear, then the juices get going and say, by the way, have you thought of, hey, maybe we take that line and go that way? Wouldn't it be funny to go anti-scene or whatever it is?
Well, and there are times when there's an outline or a first draft of the book, and then the team sits together and decides what's to be musicalized, where the song spots are. That's very much a group thing in many cases. And sometimes the composer will have a take that will influence where it goes different than the lyricist. And you think, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Let's follow that idea.
I see. Good. Well, anyway, so on the subject of City of Angels, there's some wonderful songs in there. You're Nothing Without Me, what I just mentioned before, is a tour de force for two actors. And when you hear the score, you will see why. It's genius, and the lyrics genius. This is something I'd call it adorable, only because it is. Although that probably wasn't your intention. It's adorable because it's a woman who feels this way, and the way it's written is sort of ironic. And it's called You Can Always Count on Me. And sung by a woman. It's two women in the show, yeah? Did they each sing it?
Played by the same character.
The same.
Sorry, played by the same actress. She plays just to fill it in for you.
Please.
It takes longer to explain this show than to sit through it, but it's very clear when you see it. But it's about a writer who's writing a screenplay, and you see the screenplay come to life in black and white, and you see his life in color. And there are times when you meet characters who are in his real life who inspire the characters in the screenplay. And there are later moments where you see a character in the movie who suddenly you meet someone in real life and you realize that person was the person who inspired the fictional character. This song, You Can Always Count on Me, is a bit of a tour de force for one actor, but it starts off in black and white, and the character goes to bed, turns out the light, an alarm clock goes, the light comes back on instantly, and you're in color with the other character, the real life character that inspired the character you just heard singing, which sounds impossible, but we did it 8 times.
Yes, incredible. And Randy Graff was the actress, yeah? She won a Tony for this, yeah. Okay, so here, I'm going to read this, guys, to you. I'm not going to sing it, just read it. Just listen to this. I'm one of a long line of good girls who choose the wrong guy to be sweet on. The girl with a face that says welcome, that men can wipe their feet on. I'm there when he calls me, the trusted girl Friday, all right. But what good does it do me alone on a Saturday night? And go into the chorus of the song. If you need a gal to go without salary and work too hard, you can always count on me. The kind of a pal who'd sneak you a file past the prison guard, loyal to the nth degree. The boss is quite the ladies' man, and that's my biggest gripe. Till I showed up, he's never hired a girl because she could type. I'm no femme fatale, but faithful and true as a Saint Bernard, barking up the wrong damn tree. You can always count on me. I mean, come on. I'm going to keep going. I don't need a map. Huh? Go ahead. What?
This is when it changes characters, and this is the real life character singing about the writer that she has an unrequited, an unrequited love for. They both have unrequited love for different characters, but
right, for sure. She sings, I don't need a map. I naturally head for the dead-end street. You can always count on me. That's great. I'm caught in a trap when joy is approaching, then I retreat. I'm at home with misery. I've been the other woman since my puberty began. I crashed the junior prom and met the only married man. I'm always on tap for romance or chocolate that's bittersweet. You can always count on me. And another verse. This is just gems. You guys who want to do this thing, this is it. This is your textbook. A matter of fact, if you want an ill-fated love affair, you can always count on me. Though I've made a pact to carry out research before I care, men don't give a warranty. One Joe who swore he's single got me sorta crocked, the beast. I woke up only slightly shocked that I'd defrocked a priest. Or else I attract the guys who are longing to do my hair. You can always count on me. Almost done. I go for the riffraff who's treated me so-so. See, that's awesome. You got riffraff, so-so. I go for the riffraff who's treated me so-so. When I play the second fiddle, I'm a virtuoso. I should be playing for a wedding band, but there's no wedding rings attached. But you can bet there's strings attached. Last verse. Though my kind of dame, no doubt, will die out like the dinosaurs, you can always count on me. I'm solely to blame. My head gives advice that my heart ignores. I'm my only enemy. I choose the kind who cannot introduce the girl he's with. There's lots of smirking motel clerks who call me Mrs. Smith. But I made a name with hotel detectives who break down doors. Guess who they expect to see? You can always count on. Bet a large amount on. You can always count on me. Now, isn't that gorgeous and ironic and backwards and genius? That's awesome, David.
Thank you.
I hope you didn't mind my doing that. It's sort of like you're sitting there in class while I pontificate, but I want people to know. I want people to hear that, you know, and the flavors that you roll around your tongue, you know, the inner rhymes that are lovely. You know, it's in the theater, as most theater writers know, it's vital that you use perfect rhymes. Now, perfect rhymes, guys, would be home and comb, but home and alone is not a perfect rhyme. It's what they call a near rhyme. So David always uses perfect rhymes, and it's requisite in the theater. I mean, they'll get you if you don't do that. Tell me, with that, and sometimes what it does is it boxes you in a little bit, because if you want to say, if the rhyme is enough, and you want to say love, it's tempting. Mm-hmm. To rhyme enough and love. And in rock and roll, that's done all the time. Imposing that rule upon yourself, do you find that it opens up your creativity and requires you to look deeper and come up with fresher things?
Well, it's sort of sometimes being boxed in actually is a tool, a helpful thing. It certainly helps the audience hear what you're creating, because sometimes if you can create a joke with an unexpected rhyme or a love song, an unexpected line at the end of the verse, because you heard the rhyme leading into it, you can hear more clearly what the word is. It's also I guess maybe it's old school, but it just feels right to me. On the other hand, there are times when overly rhyme it implies intelligence. If a character is rhyming, it's usually a smart character. And there are times when you don't want to hear the rhymes, when you want soft rhymes. There's a song I wrote for The Woman in White, I'll see if I can remember it, called Evermore Without You. And there are all these double rhymes in the music. It's so I worked really hard so that the rhymes wouldn't call out to the audience, or that you wouldn't hear them. Every living day, evermore without you. And at some point I had a line about trying to think, every living day. Oh God, of course I can't remember my own lyrics, but once I wrote it down, I don't have to. The idea was that the rhymes aren't trick rhymes where you take two words that don't necessarily go together and give them a new sound or something unexpected. You want to hear the rhyme in advance. Normally in a comedy song or in a character song, you don't want to hear what's coming. You want to surprise the audience with it. In a song that's a ballad with a lot of double rhymes in it, often you want to make soft rhymes so that it doesn't jar the ear, or it doesn't rhyme at all, because that takes you out of the emotion. It sounds too contrived.
Can you give an example, not necessarily from that song, but of a soft rhyme?
Let's see. Every living day, evermore without you. Well, it comes to something about I spend thinking about you. There's nothing surprising about that, and it just sort of trips off the ear. You just hear it and you go forward.
Oh, I see.
Another example where of the reverse would be a song I wrote years ago called Another Mr. Right, and there's at the end of it, is there any fight left to give that man a right left, and will there be another Mr. Right left for me? That's very self-conscious, and that's different. Do you know what I mean? That's intentional. Yeah. The soft rhyme was for something that you want to feel much more emotional about.
Yeah, does that have anything? There was one of your songs that may be an example of that. It's from Goodbye Girl. This is not necessarily a soft rhyme, so maybe I'm misunderstanding this part. But in terms of when you say there's the song No More from Goodbye Girl,
right?
We're going to talk about Goodbye Girl in a second. No more, and the character's going, there's no more this, and there's no more that, and there's no more this, and now I know I'm wiser. So she says, now I know more now. Right. So you got the KNOW, no more. Is that soft rhyme? That's not.
No,
it's a beautiful irony piece of writing.
Twisting English is filled with words that mean different things, and so twisting the meaning of a word. And also, it sounds good to use the same word in a different way at that.
Absolutely, point. Absolutely. You do it also in that show. There's a song called "I Know I Can Play This Part," and he says, "What a great guy! What a guy! What a guy!"
And the endings with "What a guy this" and "What a guy that," and some of them are funny and some of them are positive. And then at the end, "What a guy for me!"
Yes.
Yeah.
But what a guy for me.
It's the point you were making. It's a twist in the title at the end. Yeah.
It's a twist in words, the same, different spellings, different words, whatever that is in grammar. But anyway, there you go. Thank you, David. That was very interesting. And so moving on to The Goodbye Girl, which is a great score. Mr. Hamlish is great. He's great with melody. He's so good. And how was it working with Neil Simon? What was that like?
Neil was kind of mercurial. He was funny. He was very complimentary while we wrote the show. But there were times when he got a little like, there's a song in the show called You're Living on an Elliot Garfield Grant. And it's a song where the actor tells, where the young actor who moves into this apartment explains to the woman that you're only here because of me. And his name was Elliot Garfield. And that was a line, in a one-line comedy line, but a one-line throwaway in the scene. And I turned it into a song. And he got a little like, whoa, that's my joke. And yeah, that's what, now you're a book writer. Now you're getting it. But it was like, I was sort of surprised. But the best part about Neil was they had a great willingness to rewrite, but he was not my favorite collaborator because often, and he would rewrite a scene and then take everything that we said in the song and say it again in the scene in front of it. So the songs felt a little redundant, and we would often tussle about that a little bit. Because
did he wrote one musical, Star Spangled Girl or something. Later on, he wrote maybe one or two more tops. Little Me, wasn't that?
His last musical, but the first, Little Me, was a wonderful musical with Cy Cohen. That was much earlier. And he also wrote They're Playing Our Song, which is more of a play with songs in it, but it's very charming and funny. And
it is. That's right. So he did do more. So Elliot Garfield Grant's a great song. That's awesome. Guys, go to YouTube. David ZIPPEL will probably get no money for this, but you'll get benefit. Listen to Elliot Garfield Grant, and it's the lyrics are gorgeous. The melody's awesome. And Mr. Hamlish is quite a guy. I never knew him, but I understand he was a lovely man. He was a good man.
I loved him. He was wildly enthusiastic about everything. Best restaurant in 300 yards. You have to go there. This is the best cheeseburger in the world. Judy Garland is the best singer in the history of the world. Although he also loved Barbra Streisand. He was a great guy, and I loved working with him.
Good. And yes, I hear lovely things about him. When you had to rewrite for any of these shows. So this is the thing I'd also like to know. So like Goodbye Girl, let's say, opened out of town, must have, yes, somewhere.
It did.
And you see it with audiences, and you watch the audiences, listen to the joke didn't work, or the song, what's going on? We didn't introduce it right, or maybe the song doesn't work.
Right.
So whenever you got the song doesn't work, and you've got a performance tomorrow night,
right?
The song doesn't work. Have you ever had the experience where the director said, "Go home and write a song, Mr. ZIPPEL and Mr. Hamlish, and give it to me tomorrow"?
I had, the first time that ever happened to me was before I'd ever written a Broadway show. There was a rather, well, let's just say not stellar musical called Marilyn, about Marilyn Monroe. And Wally Harper was my collaborator at the time. He was Barbara Cook's musical director, and he was called in to fix the show. And there was a moment in the show where they were on the set of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and they had written a song that was not very good, and they needed a moment. And I think our assignment, or as I described it, was to write a song that made you think you were watching Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, but not sorry that you weren't hearing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, which is a fairly steep assignment.
Requisite, yeah.
We wrote a song called Cold Hard Cash, and we wrote it overnight. We wrote it in one day, and the next day they orchestrated it and taught it while it was being taught to the cast and restaged. Wow. And the day after that, they put it in the show. And it was 1983, I think. And it worked, and the number was fantastic, and the audience loved it. Unfortunately, it was like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. It did not save Marilyn, but that show ran about 6 weeks. But it was my Broadway debut, and so I got to do exactly what described. I think when it's your own work, even, you have to listen to the audience. Because if you ask people, what's wrong with this moment? Why isn't it not? You could tell when something isn't working, because it's certainly in a comedy, audiences aren't laughing, or even in a drama, they're not tracking the show. And you can feel it when you lose the audience. Mm-hmm. That's something you cannot, they never lie. If you ask them how to fix it, they will all give you advice, and they're almost always wrong. It's your job to figure out how to fix it. But where you need to fix it is something you can't ignore. It's just there. So what is a Somerset Maugham line about murder your darling? Sometimes you have to take out something you absolutely love. In most cases, we've done the rewriting before we get to the stage. You do a series of readings in front of audiences, or sometimes just for yourselves, and you hear the show together as a team, and you think, oh, that moment could be better. And the Cinderella that I'm working on, we were supposed to have a workshop, and COVID came, and it just closed us down after one day. In fact, I had gone back to New York the day before because they were stopping transatlantic flights the following day. But we did a lot of it on Zoom calls, and we could just, work together in that fashion, and we would look at moments that we had created and rewrite them together. So there are a lot of ways to do it, but you always have to be willing to say, oh, gee, I love that line, or I love that moment, but it's not serving the show. It's gone.
Or a whole song, the thing you've worked a month on, or
absolutely,
and without blink, like you say.
Sometimes you wince a little bit, but
well, you wince, but you don't hesitate.
You don't look back, and it's also something that, as I've grown a little more confident in what I do, I thought, oh my God, but that was my best line. Now I figure, you know what, there'll be others, and you just have to sort of let it go. And you tell yourself, well, we could always go back to that, but you almost never do.
That's a very good awareness that you are competent, and you'll find it again, and there's lots of it to come.
Hopefully.
Be willing to throw. Well, hopefully. Let's always hopefully, but you'd still know. Hopefully, listen. When you sit down to a blank piece of paper, I'm not suggesting that you may doubt yourself here and there, like, oh my God, am I ever going to do this again? But you know enough to know. I'm going to make an assumption that if you stick in there, you will find your way.
I know more now.
Okay, I understand. One of the really lovely parts of theater is the collaboration of the different units: the lighting unit, the sound unit, the scenes, the costumes, the scenery, the rain, the show business. Anyway, but when something's not going well, you would meet after the show, all of you in your respective department, and discuss. Right? I'm assuming, yes.
Right. And in many cases, you're all depending on one another. So your weakest link will result in the show not succeeding. So you can write a show with a great score and the book doesn't work, or reverse that. In fact, it's almost impossible to have a show without a good book, because a great score and a not good book isn't going to fly. Sometimes a not great score and a good book can actually work. But when the scenery doesn't work, or Hal Prince had a line, which if you can't look at a show, you can't hear it. So if a show is not attractive or doesn't flow beautifully, you'll miss the show anyway. And if the producer isn't good at it, then the whole thing is going to sink. You're mutually dependent upon one another to have a good hit. It's a successful show.
Right. Yes. Boy, oh boy.
But nothing more exciting when it all comes together and works. And when you're working with talented people, you can be a little more. Sometimes if you have relationships with your collaborators, you've worked on multiple shows with them, you have a confidence that it infuses one another with the ability or the willingness to dare a little bit, and it gets good.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yes, and I know just what you mean. I've had the honor of experiencing that a couple of times, more than a couple of times, and enjoying those horrible times where we don't know, one doesn't know what to do. There's a lot of money riding on it, and they're coming again tomorrow. Even if it's previews, they're coming again tomorrow. So what are we going to do, guys? And you figure it out.
Larry Gelbart had a famous line that's often quoted, and he says, "If Hitler is still alive, I hope he's out of town with a show and trying out a show.
It's pretty punishing. It can be, but when it works, like you say, and it goes magic, goes true. I often wonder what My Fair Lady was like when the first preview, or the first time it worked, when everyone saw that. I don't know when that was, if it was opening night or within a preview, or in West End or whatever. But when that happened, that must have been when no one could say anything about it, but ooh la la.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, and you go for it. That's what you go for. David, you did some lovely work in film. You did it's nice, a movie. I didn't see the movie, but I heard the score. The Swan Princess. It was lovely.
Thank you.
Lovely. And that was around the time you and I, let's see, a little later, I think we wrote Born for You, and we wrote My Headstrong Heart.
Right.
And Look to the Light, I think it was one. It was for a movie, it was for the Poseidon Adventure Goes to Camp or something, with some follow-up to Poseidon Adventure gets a tattoo. I don't know why they resurrected it, but they did. And we wrote something for that, and whatever. I don't know where that went.
Good song, though.
Yeah, it was a lovely song. Everything we wrote is beautiful.
I'm proud of it.
I can say that. Me too, David. But then you did Hercules for Disney, which is a really ambitious project. There's a lot of up tempo, rappy, R&B, old school, new school things going on. So that was a whole different thing.
We're turning that into a stage show right now. We did it in Central Park pre-COVID, and it went really well. And so Disney, we're working to put it into some kind of an out-of-town production so it finds its own way where it belongs sometime next summer, not this coming summer.
Oh, fantastic. All right, and you and Alan Menken writing new songs for it as well?
We are.
Flesh it out?
Joyful.
How fun.
Writing with
fun
him
is
is
that?
joyful.
He's great, isn't he? Well, you've done a lot of work with him.
I've been very lucky. Writing with you is a joy, and I have really good collaborators, so it's been I'm very fortunate.
Thank you. Yeah, these boys are extraordinary. So you wrote one of my favorite songs, I Can Go the Distance from Hercules. And it was a #1 hit, Michael Bolton. And, I'll be there someday. I can go the distance. I will find my way if I can be strong. And every mile will be worth my while. When I go the distance, I'll be right where I belong. It's beautiful, and it's what a hit song should be. I don't know if you thought you were doing that when you were doing it, but
that was actually interesting. It came very late in the process. Writing an animated film is very much like writing a stage musical, where you block out the songs first, and then the songs are written and the animation is actually done to the songs as they're created. So usually you don't change anything late in the show, but we found ourselves with a ballad at the end of the show that was supposed to be the hit, a song I rather loved called I Won't Say, for our character Meg and the Muses. And by changing that, we didn't have a pop song anymore, and we wanted a song that we thought could be a hit. So it required us to take out another song that we loved and replace that with a new song. And also that song had to be, Alan decided that this song should be the Olympic theme of the show, this song that would become the underscoring. So he wrote a theme, and I was very lucky. Again, the phrase "I can go the distance" just popped out of this melody for me, and I was surprised that "Go the distance" hadn't been used in a song before, since it's one of those phrases that we all know. So, and we wrote that song, and it thankfully did the job. It was a hit song. It did fill that moment of the I Want song moment in the show, where the character expresses his need at the beginning, and became the Olympian theme that kind of pulled the whole score together. So
yes, well, it's also the I Want song for the public.
Right.
It's an I Want song for the public, and it's gorgeous. And I want to just point to one thing, a lyric that you used on the third verse, I think the third chorus. And I won't look back. I can go the distance. I'll stay on track. No, I won't accept defeat. This one. It's an uphill slope, but I won't lose hope. I'll go the distance, and my journey is complete. Well, has anyone ever heard of the word slope used in a song? I haven't. Anybody? Hands? And David, it's just great because you could have done anything with that. Looking for you had to have a perfect rhyme. You want hope. So what's the rhyme? When I will, when I look at failure, I say nope. What could you say? And you pulled this out of your talent and imagination. It's lovely.
Or someplace south of there.
I will use a rope, or I won't lose hope. Slope is best. Trust me, you did the right thing.
Thank you.
Oh man. Okay. Just a little bit more. Okay, and then as if that's not enough, for God's sake, you go and you write Mulan for Disney with Matthew Wilder, and it's also a gorgeous score.
Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful score. The song Reflection is sung by many people. I go to Philippines a lot. Lea Salonga sings that. She sang it in the movie, did she?
Yeah, she did. She did the movie version, and Christina Aguilera, that was her debut as the end title singer.
Wow. It's a gorgeous song. Then you wrote True to Your Heart. And so my question is, the True to Your Heart, True to Your Heart. And it's with 98 Degrees and Stevie Wonder.
My idol. So that was thrilling.
Tell me, what was that like? Were you in the studio? What?
It was an amazing experience. And one of the things about it that was so extraordinary was that Matthew Wilder, who's a wonderful man and a great composer, wanted a harmonica lick and wanted to know if Stevie would do it. It was a song for 98 Degrees, who were very popular at the time. Yeah. And Stevie came to do the harmonica thing. And he said, I love this song. I'll sing it. So suddenly we had a duet with Stevie Wonder, and he just liked the song and wanted to be a part of it. And pinch me. I don't think Stevie did many songs he didn't write. And so we were honored and thrilled. And again, what a gracious, wonderful man. That's one of the pinch me moments of my career, I have to say.
Oh, goodness gracious, I'll bet. And were you in the studio? You must have been there when he cut his vocal.
I think I was writing something else for Disney. I think they sent me, actually, I was working on a project that I ended up not finishing because they changed the project. But I think I was in Switzerland with Phil Collins, believe it or not, when that happened.
Were you working on Tarzan?
Tarzan, and then originally Tarzan was going to have the characters sing the songs, and about a third of the way through the project, they decided to have a background score where Phil would sing the songs and kind of as and music over scenes. So suddenly it was his voice, and it made more sense for him to write his own lyrics because he was a wonderful lyricist. And so I didn't have a role anymore, but it was a fun writing with him while it lasted.
Lovely. Yeah, he's amazing. Well, that's extraordinary. Well, that's look, you have had and are having kind of a dream career, in my estimation, a dream career because you deserve it. You really, I think it's as simple as that. You do the work, you do it well, you've got the talent, and we love and thank you. I have a couple more questions. Go ahead.
I was just going to throw something in about, and I feel so fortunate to have written with everyone I've written with, you of course included. But even dream career, I had a period where, very sadly, many of my collaborators passed away mid-project. So I was doing a show with Wendy Wasserstein, and we were supposed to go out of town, and suddenly, unexpectedly at 77, I think, Cy Coleman died. And so we postponed it for a year because it had been complete. And Wendy got cancer, and shortly after that, she died, and the project just stopped.
Mhm.
And around the same time, I had 2 projects with Larry Gelbart, and we tried to continue them with other composers, but Larry got unexpectedly ill and passed
Oh,
away.
oh my
And
gosh.
Wally Harper passed away. So it was suddenly a huge chunk of my career just ended. Eventually, we were able to do a production of Pamela's first musical, literally, I think, 12 or 13 years after Wendy died, with the help of Chris Durang, who's a wonderful writer. And
Right, sure
we
is.
did a little theater in New Jersey, and there was something very cathartic about that, and bittersweet, missing both Cy and Wendy, but I think they would have been happy with it. It's, again, you just don't know. And your advice, you just write and write and write and
Yes.
follow your heart and do projects that you believe in, because even if they don't happen, if it's something that you love, you won't be sorry that you did it.
Yes. Oh boy. Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you a couple more questions, David.
Sure.
I really appreciate you hanging with me here. I want to know about this Mr. Weber, Andrew Lloyd variety of Weber that you've been working with. And you guys wrote a very ambitious thing. I saw The Woman in White on Broadway, and it was wonderful. It was just wonderful. And, you know, he gets knocked by critics. And look, you know, I've heard a few things he's done where I go, try a little harder, you know, every once in a while, but mostly not. Mostly, I'm impressed with you know, how wide his keyboard is when he, you know, and he's had opportunities. I say this one thing: he's had opportunities to repeat himself, because goodness knows he's been the gold standard, the hallmark for the modern opera, you know, with Phantom, Vita, and all these things that he's done, and Sunset Boulevard, and yet with The Woman in White, he treads similar ground, but he was trying. I could see him trying to find new ground, and
that was his Benjamin Britten moment, which is not always the most widely popular approach, but he has integrity. He really does care. He's a musical dramatist. He's more interested in using music to tell the story, and he's very story driven. I respect that enormously. It's fun. This particular project we're doing now is a new take on Cinderella, and it's because it's a funny, romantic project, and with a wink to it. It's brought out some really lovely songs from him. I think I believe, you know, he's top drawer, Andrew Lloyd Webber. Time will tell, but so far the 3 of the songs have come out, and people have been very enthusiastic about them.
Oh, that's great to hear. It's great to hear. Well, I mean, what you two do together is also something different. In The Woman in White, was what I can speak about, is its own animal. It's very unique, and it's got, you know, it's got smart, ironic, wonderful things, but it's also got some beautiful, heartfelt things, and a very interesting story, a very unlikely story. And I thought it worked beautifully. I was very moved by it.
Thank you. We revisited it about 2 years ago in the West End, in a small theater, and it was an opportunity for us to clean it up a little bit, because there were it felt like there were moments that we stayed too long at the fair and that we needed to cut. Our director, who's at the time Trevor Nunn, is a wonderful director, but he tended to paint with a broad brush and didn't want to cut anything. And we all felt that there was some trimming that we wanted to do, and some just to streamline the story a little bit. And so I think we improved it enormously when we did it the second time. But again, it's a 700-page Wilkie Collins novel. He was a contemporary of Charles Dickens. And in fact, Charles Dickens was his publisher. And,
oh my! And
Wilkie and The Woman in White, when it was written, was more popular, I think, than anything Dickens had written in those days.
Oh my!
And the story is that when it was written serially, over a certain amount of time, a a chapter would come out every several weeks. And when the last chapter came out, they closed Parliament because everybody wanted to go home and read it immediately.
Oh my gosh.
And so, but you're right, it is an unlikely story and rather dark. And I did it partly because Andrew asked me to, and I wanted to write with him, and partly because it scared the hell out of me because I'd never written a through composed musical at that point. And it wasn't my, my history. The things that I loved were the classic American book musicals like Gypsy and the Rodgers and Hammerstein and a West Side Story. So this was something completely foreign to me. And it was a great experience. I loved doing it.
It's extraordinary. And if I may ask you on that score, when there's something is sung through, it's like an opera, and they call that recitative, which is
Right.
you're reciting and singing.
Right.
And Andrew obviously uses that to great effect. When they had the recitative sections in The Woman in White, were they musicalized book lines, or did you fashion the book lines? How did that work?
Charlotte would write a scene, and Andrew had themes, and we would decide which themes belonged in which spot. And then I would sometimes take book lines and fashion them into lyrics, and sometimes just rewrite them as lyrics. So it was a little of both.
I see. We're a true collaboration there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. There's a song in there called "Oh for Laura," which makes me cry. It's a beautiful song. Guys, listen to that. Listen to that score. Go get it. The Woman in White. It's a very, very adventurous piece of work and beautifully done, and funny. And Michael Crawford was in it.
He
The original
certainly
Phantom.
Indeed.
There's a live performance. When you hear the work on Spotify, I think it was, they have a little bonus track at the end, and it's Michael singing it live on stage in England. And you hear the audience just pee their pants with his performance. It's quite wonderful. All right, my friend, just a couple more things. You, as a director, so you're a director, and so you wrote Princesses with Matthew Wilder,
did.
And directed it as well?
I did. In fact, if you want to be a director, you almost always have to create your own show or be, I don't know, otherwise I don't know if anyone will hire you. And you have to make something so attractive that they want to produce it with you as the director, which is what my goal was. And we did it in several theaters. Sadly, it hasn't come to Broadway yet. We tried it out of town, and we got mixed reviews, but it was on the way to being terrific, I believe. But we couldn't get a theater, and the producer held the set and the costumes and the cast together as long as he could, and there still wasn't an available theater, and eventually everybody scattered to the winds. And
okay, well, the good news is that when something exists, it exists, and
indeed,
and when it's good, it's good. You did a thing with Liza Minnelli at the Palace, which is extraordinary, and you wrote special material for that, or did you direct that as well?
I did not direct that. It was brilliantly directed by a man named Ron Lewis, who's also a choreographer, and the staging is sensational. Liza and I wrote the script together. I took her story and fashioned them into a books, into dialogue for her. And then John Kander and Billy Stritch and I wrote the introduction to a song together, which was really fun. John Kander is a hero of mine.
Yeah, he's great. He's so great. And so that's interesting. So you sat down with Liza, and it was the story of her life?
Well, there were certain things, and it was about her relationship, a lot of it, with Kay Thompson, who was her godmother and a great songwriter and performer. And they were doing a section of the show which was a replica of Kay's act.
Oh, wow.
At the Coconut Grove. And she had four singer dancers that were with her, and it was quite dramatic. And but also she told stories about Kay and her life and her mom. And I worked with her. She would tell me the stories, and then I would sort of write them, trying to capture what she said. So it was definitely a collaboration, and to give it a little form. And And that was my gig, which was
Yeah.
amazing because just staggering to see her relationship with the audience. She would get 7 or 8 or more, sometimes 9 standing ovations within each show. It was really something. It was called Liza's at the Palace, and it was at the Palace Theater in New York. And I'll never forget it. It was thrilling.
That is unbelievable. I've seen her live, and I know kind of what you mean. But to see her at the Palace, again, where her mother made such a big impression. And the Palace Theater is still there, no?
Oh, it is. It is. They're doing something to it. They're lifting it up.
Good.
3 stories higher so that they can build some kind of mall underneath it, right on Broadway and 47th Street. Crazy.
I went, good.
But preserving it. Yeah, they're preserving it.
But preserving it. That's good. That's good.
That is good.
David, is there anything that you'd like to say in closing to the people that have their eyeballs on this and are watching us in terms of young writers, in terms of up-and-coming lyricists in particular? Anything you'd like to advise them about or impart to them?
You know, I would just amplify what you said about doing it. When I was a kid, I used to listen to the radio, and I would write parody songs of the hits of the day to make fun of my teachers, to amuse my friends. And that, and listening to everyone else's work, Billy Joel, Joni Mitchell, listening to people I thought were great, and of course, cast albums, every Broadway show I could get my hands on, including the flops. And you listen to and you'd sort of listen and you think, why is this good? And why don't I like this? And often you can learn as much from the things that don't work as the things that were hits. And you teach yourself, because it's not something you can really go to school for, although they do teach it in schools now. But so I encourage you to write and write and write, and to find people like David Pomeranz to write with is another good suggestion.
Thank you, David. Thank you. Thank you so much, my friend.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
David, you're a treasure, and you're the loveliest guy, and I'm so happy for all the good fortune that's befallen you, because you've earned every bit of it.
Thank you.
Every bit of it. Yeah, it's all true. So, thank you, David ZIPPEL, and here we go. So that wraps up another episode of Song Sessions. Be with us next time when we'll explore the universe of yet another master songwriter. In the meantime, for all of you hardworking artists out there, keep creating beautiful things for us. This world needs you now more than ever. Please, please, please. Until then, bye-bye for now. This is David Pomeranz, and I'll see you next time on Song Sessions. Bye-bye.